Well, hi, Julie here from Cricut Leg Creative. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm showing a DIY spinning wheel card project, and you'll want to make sure to keep watching because I'm going to show you an easy tip on how to quickly divide a circle into thirds. I learned that making this card. I thought it was a pretty cool trick, and I'll show you. I'm using a stamp set called Breakfast Puns from Sunny Studio. I'll link that in the video description below. Super cute set with lots of fun breakfasty things and pun sentiments using those words. I'm using some craft cardstock today for the main part of the card and some Nina 110-pound cardstock for the wheel. I'm using a 4-inch circle die from a Hero Arts Infinity circle die set, and I've cut it out of my Nina white cardstock and also some scrap paper, and the scrap paper is going to be my template for the wheel. So here is where I'm going to show you how to divide a circle into thirds. You're going to fold it in half and crease it really well, and then fold it in half again in the opposite direction. And where those fold lines intersect, you're going to put a pencil mark. That's going to be your center. So once you've marked the center, you're going to also mark the very center bottom. And from there, you take a ruler and kind of pivot out from that point 2 inches, half of your diameter. And you're going to do that on either side of that bottom mark. And once you've made those 2 marks, you'll just draw a line from the very top to the center mark. And then from those side marks we just made to the center mark. Basically, you're drawing like a peace symbol. And that will give you your thirds. I'm just going to take an old Cricut tool that I've got and poke a hole in the center of that. And now I'm just kind of freehanding, making what the window is going to be. This will be the template we use to cut the window in the front of the card. I was going to freehand that circle, but I decided to get a smaller die from that set and use that to trace that rounded edge. And then I decided to use my ruler to kind of straighten up those side lines. And then I'll take my scissors and make a couple of release cuts in the paper here. When you're trimming inside something, it makes it a lot easier if you will do a couple of release cuts. It gives you a little more wiggle room for your scissors. And I've left a little bit of room there in the center, you can see, for my brad that's going to go there. I don't want it to be too close to a cut edge. So once that's cut out, that will be the window that will trace onto the front of the card. That's my EK Success trimmers. I really like those. I'll try to link those also in the video description or something similar. I've had those for a while. So now I'm going to trace this onto the white wheel because I need to have a space where I can tell where each little scene is going to go. I'm having 3 scenes using those breakfast pun images, and I'm just kind of eyeballing, lining those up so that I'm drawing those wedges onto that wheel. Okay, those are all drawn in. You can see there the 3 areas where I'm going to be stamping, and poking a hole in the middle of that one too. Those are going to be lined up later. Okay, so now it's time to kind of line up that window on the front of the card. I was going to try to just see if I could do it without measuring, but I didn't want that window to be ski-wampus at all, so decided to get a ruler out and find the center of the template, and then the center of the top of the card, and then I can make a light pencil mark, and then using my ruler, any straight edge, I can kind of line up all those marks to make sure that I'm centered really well. And then once that's centered, I can just trace that inside edge there for that window, and that's what I'm going to end up cutting out. So the next step is to take some of my mint tape. I'll link that too. I got that from scrapbook.com. Just going to mask off the edge there so I can start doing some background stamping on the front. And I've got my chocolate chip color dye ink pad from Stampin' Up. I think that's a retired color, but any kind of chocolate color, brown, would work on this craft paper. I just wanted something a little more subtle. Just stamp all over. No pattern really, other than I'm trying to space them out fairly regularly and consistently. I'm using the fried egg, the donut, the bacon, and the toast, and then I'm going to use, there's a little strawberry stamp in there too, and I'm going to use that to kind of fill in any little spaces that I've left blank. Oh, and there's the mug too. I'm using that mug of coffee, hot chocolate, whatever you want to call it. I really wanted to use 4 scenes on the wheel because there's a super cute waffle stamp, and I thought waffles and strawberries would have been a cute scene to do in there, but I just didn't have the room. So I'm just cutting out the window now with my X-Acto knife. It would be really helpful if I had a die that was the right size for this, but I'm just doing a DIY here. So using my knife, just carefully cutting it out. Make a little mistake here, and I didn't quite line up the line. My shop light that's shining on my project was kind of obscuring my pencil lines, but I was able to go back over it and fix it so there's a nice clean cut right there. So that cut turned out pretty nice. Time to remove the tape. You can see it makes a nice edge there on the card front. And now I'm just gonna take my sentiment that says "We Code Together Like" and stamp that in that same chocolate chip brown on my scrap paper. Now I'm gonna use the Memento Tuxedo Black to stamp my scenes inside those little wedges. And I'm just kind of eyeballing here, putting the stamps together and figuring out where they're gonna go. I'm going to put whatever stamp I want to be in the foreground, stamp that first, and I kind of like to stamp it off to the side just to make sure I'm not in a dry part of the stamp pad. Sometimes your stamp pads get a little dry and you don't know it till you've stamped it. And then I'm stamping it on some Post-it note because I want to make a mask of that. I want the bacon to look like it's behind the egg, so I'm just going to cut off just the edge where the bacon's going to be stamped. I don't really need to cut the whole thing out, so I'm just cutting it out with those EK Success scissors that I like, laying it down right on top of the egg, and then I'm just going to stamp the bacon right on top of it. Trying to be really careful here not to intrude into the other sections, and that shop light made it a little difficult. It's throwing some pretty gnarly shadows, so I don't quite get it perfect, but it ends up being pretty cute. So this is going to end up being a little wheel that the receiver will turn, and with the sentiment that says "We Go Together Like," you'll be able to turn it and it'll show bacon and eggs. And this toast is going to end up being peanut butter and jelly. So I'm stamping it twice. I'm making a mask of it, and then I'll stamp another piece of toast over it, and that'll be the jelly or jam, however you want to say it. And then the third little wedge of this wheel is going to be hot chocolate, coffee, whatever you choose to see there, and a donut. I really enjoy seeing how other people use stamp sets. I find that it helps me to be more creative and come up with new ideas when I see what other people are doing. So I encourage you to go to Sunny Studio website and look up their stamp sets. You can look up this particular stamp set, and on the product page for it you can see examples of ways that other people have used it. And I think that's a lot of fun to see how other people, what ideas other people come up with. So I'm making another mask here for my little mug. Same thing, I only need to cut the one side because that's the only side that really needs a mask, because I'm just going to stamp the donut right next to it. You can use special masking papers for this, but I find that for small images, Post-it notes work just as well. I would use maybe like Masking Magic from Gina K for a large image, especially since you can save those to use them again. But for these small images, Post-it notes work just great. So I've got my template out again. I'm going to line it up with the window that I cut and then use that poking tool to poke a hole through the front of the card, because I kind of want to line up my wheel and put my brad in just for a second and just make sure that that's going to work out okay. And I also need to line up this little circle die so that I can cut a little chunk out of the side of the card so that you can see the edge of the wheel, and you can turn it from that little kind of in the middle. It's just about in the middle there. So I'm just kind of lining it up where I think that middle is, taping that circle die in place, and then I need to take that brad out because I don't want to run that through my die cut machine. And then I'll just run that through to make that little cutout area. And I'm also going to need to do that on another piece of craft paper. I'm just lining it up behind there, just a piece to go on the very back of the front of that card, so that I can cover up the back of the wheel and the back of the brad. By the way, I got those little brads from Stampin' Up. I've had those for a while. I don't think they have them anymore, but they're pretty common. So I'm just coloring now. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love coloring in with these markers. I got these on Amazon. They're Ohuhu brand alcohol markers. I got a set of 120 for just under $100 on Amazon. I'd really rather have Copics. Those are the gold standard, I guess, but this is what I can afford for right now, and they're pretty good. A lot of the markers are pretty wet and nice. They blend so much more nicely when they're wet. Maybe 10 to 15% of the markers in my set are pretty dry, so they're really hard to use for blending. The thing I don't like about these markers is they're not refillable, and if you want to replace one of them, you can't buy the colors individually. So I'm just kind of replacing with Copics as I go. It's a lot cheaper to buy a set of Copics though, so that hopefully in the near future I will be collecting some sets of Copics because they're really awesome. I only have a couple right now, but I can tell just from those couple there's a big difference between my markers and my Ohuhu markers and the Copics. So I was going to start coloring some background here, and I started to erase my lines, and then I thought, no, I want to see because I want to make sure I don't go too far out of the lines. So I didn't really, I was going to erase, and then I kind of added it back in, and now I'm finding that, oh, I can't get that pencil mark off. So next time I will make sure to erase the pencil marks before I start coloring, but I kind of wanted to have little backgrounds for each of the scenes. So I picked a different soft color for each one, the blue for the egg and bacon, and kind of a peachy color for the peanut butter and jelly, and a nice soft yellow for the donut scene. And later I end up coloring out to the edge, but for now I'm just putting it in to see how it looks. Put that brad back in and turn it and see what I've got. Looks pretty good. Looks like some of those spaces are invading the other ones, but it still looks pretty good. I like that. So I'm going to apply the sentiment with my Lawn Fawn 1/8 inch double stick tape and just place that just above my spinning wheel window. I think this would be a cute card to make with, if you have a lot of little stamps, you could really do some fun things with that. Yeah, so this is where I decide that because that color, the background color on each of those wedges was kind of peeking through where that little turning wheel is on the side of the card, I decided to just go ahead and take that color all the way out to the edges. The yellow and blue that I'm using there, those are 2 Copic markers that I recently bought. Man, I can tell you, I really love those Copics so much better. If I make this card again, I will likely make it larger just because I don't want to be so cramped for space for those stamped images. It's a little bit tight, and on each scene you can kind of see a little bit from the scene next to it, but that's okay. Okay, so at this point I'm just going to take a Sharpie fine tip marker and add little arrow lines on that little section there so the receiver knows that they should spin it. And I didn't show here the mistake I made. I actually put the piece of craft paper on the back with just plain flat double stick tape, and when I did that it did not leave enough room for the wheel to spin. I mean, it would spin, but it just wasn't very smooth, so I took that craft paper off and put down some foam double stick tape just so that it would give a little more space for the wheel, and that made a big difference. I got a little too much there, took my X-Acto knife and trimmed that off, and it was good to go. Cute little breakfast card. Who doesn't love breakfast foods? Hey, right at the end, and you'll see it in the picture in a second, I take my white gel pen and draw some steam lines right on that mug and just flick them with my finger to smudge them. Hey, if you like this card, I sure would love a thumbs up from you, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos like this, and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Okay? Y'all take care.